How strong is the US military in 2024? If you do enjoy this video in the end, be sure to like it and also subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Let's get into this video.
What is that? What is that?
First, let's talk about money. After all, no country can maintain military dominance without substantial financial investment. And when it comes to the US's annual defense spending budget, calling it a substantial financial investment might just be the understatement of the century. Why? The defense budget the US Congress approved for 2024 is a staggering $886 billion.
Damn!
Percent of the country's gross domestic product, or GDP. Though this number is insanely impressive in and of itself, it becomes mind-blowing when you consider how much other nations are spending on defense. The number 2 nation, China,
3%.
plans to spend $236.1 billion on defenses in 2024, a notable 7.2% leap from the previous year. This increase is even higher with the third-ranked nation, Russia, which intends to spend around $109 billion on national defense, approximately 30% more than in 2023. As monumental as the difference between the U.S.'s military budget and the ones from the second and third-ranking countries, it's also important to note that the U.S. probably won't see any significant increases in defense spending anytime soon. You see, the increase in the U.S. military budget was capped at 1% in 2023, thanks to a 2-year budget deal. Financial experts don't see significant changes in the U.S.'s military budget for at least 2 more years. Afterward, the experts estimate that the budget could gradually rise to $922 billion
almost
in
a
2035.
trillion, dude.
But let's go back to the present for now. What is the U.S. spending its military budget on? Number-wise, how strong is the U.S. military in 2024?
Yeah, I want to know how many.
Let's start with the total available military manpower. This figure refers to the total number of people a nation could mobilize in the event of a war, be it offensive or defensive in nature. Remember that this number can only be estimated and represents a rough picture of the potential force size, not an exact count. According to GFP estimates, the U.S. could commit almost 150 million people to its war effort,
it was a lot.
44% of its total population, though being able to commit over 650 million people to their respective war efforts. A similar situation can be seen in the number of people fit for military service. As the name suggests, these are the able-bodied people who could theoretically fight or participate in material production during a long-running war campaign. The U.S. roughly has 124 million troops, while India and China can offer 4 to 5 times more.
The thing is, though, I'm just going to say here, it's pretty obvious, but quality will always be over quantity, I would say. You know, well-educated, knowledgeable people. Like, if you think about it, there's a lot of guns and gun activity in America compared to China or India. Most people that maybe have never been in the military or, you know, shot anything as a military purpose, they've probably shot a gun already. They've probably got experience with handling guns and all that stuff that they've got over there because of the gun culture. So I would assume, you know, having the number that America has will 100% be more effective than the amount of people from like China or India, because they're not really gonna know how to use a gun or whatever maybe.
In other words, how many soldiers are currently engaged in full-time military work and could be ready to fight for the nation at any given moment? The answer is approximately 1.3 million highly trained individuals. Though this figure places the U.S. in the top 3 countries in the world, it's important to note that the number of active duty personnel has been declining for quite some time. That's why the current figures are far from the most recent peak of over 2 million active duty soldiers in 1987. But what about reserve personnel? Unfortunately, this isn't where the U.S. shines in the 2024 military power ranking. The U.S. has almost 800,000 of these reservists as part of its military force in 2024. The figure is nowhere near Vietnam's 5 million reservists, which occupies the #1 position globally. It's also significantly lower than 3 other nations in the top 5 in the military power ranking of 2024. South Korea, with over 3 million reservists,
do they have so many
Russia with approximately 2 million, and India with roughly 1.15 million reserve duty personnel. The only other country in the top 5 with fewer reservists is China, which has 500,000.
Wait, that is really weird. How come Vietnam, I don't really know the population that Vietnam has, but it's nowhere near China. Why do they have... I don't really get that. What, the numbers aren't really adding up. I feel like Vietnam and China should have switched places. Is there like a war going on over there? Or like just something I don't know? Maybe they just never know what's going to happen. So they've made it so that maybe everyone's a reservist. As soon as you turn 18, maybe you become one. I don't really know.
Ways to look at this number, one more positive and the other quite the opposite. On one hand, the relatively low number of reservists in the U.S. could be attributed to the country's reliance on a well-established active duty force and sophisticated military technology. On the other hand, the number of U.S. reservists could be related to how overused the military component is. As things currently stand, some reservists are expected to provide daily support to global military operations. This could have something to do with fewer people deciding to join the military as a reservist. United States Armed Forces collectively manages three major service branches: the U.S. Army, the U.S. Air Force, and the U.S. Navy. The U.S. has three other notable military divisions: the U.S. Marine Corps, the U.S. Space Force, and the U.S. Coast Guard. Five of these branches are managed by the Department of Defense. The U.S. Coast Guard is the only exception, falling under the responsibility of the Department of Homeland Security. But what exactly are these departments managing? First, let's get the numbers out of the way. Number one is the Army, the largest and oldest service in the U.S., with roughly 452,000 active duty soldiers. This is the smallest total the Army has been since 1940, a year before the U.S. joined World War II. In second place, we have the Navy, the U.S.'s forward deployed force. In 2024, this branch had approximately 347,000 active duty sailors. As with the Army, the U.S. generally isn't satisfied with the number. Third-ranking branch is the Air Force, closely following the Navy, with approximately 324,000 active duty personnel. The Department of Defense describes the Air Force as having rapid, flexible, and lethal air and space capability.
Yeah,
Next up,
I mean, 100% they've got the best
component of the Department of the Navy, which accounts for about 172,000 of the U.S.'s active duty personnel. This leaves us with one more Department of Defense-controlled branch, the U.S. Space Force.
Now, what do
Due
they
to the
do?
unique nature of this branch, it shouldn't be surprising that it's by far the smallest, encompassing only about 9,400 active personnel. It also makes it the smallest branch in the U.S. military in general. Coast Guard, 41,700 active. The other, arguably even more important aspect is the equipment and technology they possess. In this regard, we'll focus on three areas of attack. Let's look at U.S. land, air power, and naval power. When it comes to tanks, the M1 Abrams continues to lead the way, making up for a good portion of the country's 4,657 tanks.
Dude,
this makes the U.S.
that's a
the
big
NATO
number,
country
man.
with the highest number of tanks.
Holy shit.
However, the same cannot be said for the world, as this position belongs to Russia, which has over 14,000 tanks.
Yeah,
While
but
Russia's
that's
main
quantity
battle
over
tank,
quality
the T-72
again,
is
isn't it?
far inferior to the U.S.'s Abrams
I was about to
tanks.
say, they
The
just
same cannot be said for the T-14 Armada,
They've just
which was
reducted
designed to rival and even surpass its Western counterparts' capabilities.
Well, they don't have a lot of
widely
those,
respected M2
so-
Bradley remains a cornerstone of the U.S. ground forces, providing formidable firepower and mobility. However, we mustn't forget about the Stryker armored vehicles that have allowed the U.S. ground forces to cover a myriad of battlefield roles with as many as 10 variants of this Canadian-made vehicle.
Wow.
So it's
Canadian.
no wonder that some 10% of all U.S. infantry fighting vehicles are Stryker armored vehicles. These include
Oh, that's cool.
1,789 M1126 infantry carrier vehicles, or ICVs, 545 M1127 reconnaissance vehicles, or RVs, 441 M1129 mortar carriers, MCs,
Mortar carrier?
348 M1130 commanders vehicles, or CVs, 304 M1133 medical evacuation vehicles, or MEVs. The remainder
Okay.
of some 360,000 frontline, second line, and support vehicles are mostly wheeled types designed for urban fighting based
God
on
damn.
experiences in Afghanistan and Iraq. This impressive figure also makes the U.S. the #1 country in the world in terms of infantry fighting vehicles, as they possess more than double these vehicles compared to the next countries on the list, China
Double.
and Russia. Unfortunately, the U.S.
Okay,
artillery
bud.
systems don't showcase the same superiority. Here we'll look at two artillery systems, self-propelled and towed. Both these systems have a pretty self-explanatory name. The U.S. operates an equal number of both these systems. It has
Really?
almost 1,600 self-propelled guns, and almost all of them are M109 Paladin tracked vehicles. As for their towed counterparts, there are about 1,267 of them used by the U.S. military. Roughly 820 of those are the M777 howitzer class systems
Howitzer?
operated by the Army and Marine Corps.
I was just wondering, what is the benefit of having a towed one? Because I know artillery movement is a really big thing with artillery, you know? If you shoot, they're going to try and find out where the f that artillery is coming from and try and bomb it or whatever it may be. So to be able to move and get out of there. So I'm not really sure why they would keep these howitzers and still use them. Is it laziness? Is it they're efficient? Is it they're good? I don't really know, but yeah, I'm just wondering, why would you still have this type of artillery when it might be inferior to, you know, the other machines?
This leaves us with multiple launch rocket systems. These systems aim to provide rapid and widespread firepower against ground targets, typically using rockets or missiles launched from a mobile platform. The U.S. ground forces operate almost 700 of these handy systems, with the M142 HIMARS launcher making up more than a quarter of the total number. Now, it's time to take flight.
Here we go.
How does the U.S. rank in terms of air power in 2024? The answer is simple. In the air, the U.S. is second to none.
I don't even think it's close, is it?
Service-available airframes, the U.S. maintains the world's most formidable air force with a diverse fleet of aircraft. So let's inspect this fleet in more detail. The U.S. Air Force is one of the few services worldwide that operates a dedicated bomber fleet with aircraft capable of both conventional and nuclear attacks. The standout bomber aircraft in this fleet include the B-1B Lancer as the backbone of the U.S.'s long-range bomber force. The Air Force operates 39 of those high-level bombers, which can carry the highest payload of 75,000 pounds.
Holy!
The B-2
Isn't that a
Spirit,
nuke?
It's a multi-role bomber capable of carrying both conventional and nuclear warheads.
Okay,
Due to a high per-unit cost, only 21 of these aircraft are in the U.S. fleet, but the amount of firepower these units bring more than makes up for their modest number. The B-52 Stratofortress is a long-range heavy bomber that can fly at high subsonic speeds at altitudes of up to 50,000 feet.
Oh my.
The U.S. force has used these bombers since the 1950s and operates 72 units.
Well, they must be really
Next
good
up,
then.
the U.S. Air Force's fighter aircraft fleet. These aircraft remain the frontline defenders for the U.S. Air Force, which operates as many as 1,854. Let's list the most notable among them. The F-15 Eagle is an all-weather, extremely maneuverable tactical fighter, represented by over 500 units. The F-16 Fighting Falcon is a compact multi-role fighter that's relatively low cost. That last factor explains why the Air Force operates 775 of these fighters, the most of any model. The F-22 Raptor is a supersonic all-weather stealth fighter that can perform both air-to-air and air-to-ground missions. The Air Force has 177 of these premier aircraft.
177?
The F-35A Lightning II,
it's a lot less than I
US Air
thought.
Force's latest fifth-generation fighter, accounts for 310 units. Though these aircraft might be the first you think of, the U.S. Air Force fleet doesn't solely consist of aircraft designed to engage in combat or intercept other aircraft. It also includes aircraft designed for various other crucial missions, such as refueling, transport, and reconnaissance. Here are some of the more notable aircraft fulfilling these roles. First up, tanker aircraft, designed to extend the operational range of other aircraft. The U.S. Air Force has over 2,600 of these valuable aircraft, including the following: 388 KC-135 Stratotanker aerial refueling.
Do you really
tankers,
need that many, though?
61 KC-46A Pegasus aerial refueling and strategic military transport aircraft, 40 KC-10 Extender advanced tanker and cargo aircraft. As for transport aircraft, the U.S. Air Force operates over 950 units of the most diverse design, with the C-17 Globemaster III as the primary hauler with 228 units. Interestingly, this fleet also includes limited numbers of special aircraft designed to transport VIP individuals, such as U.S. leaders and high-ranking government and Department of Defense officials. There's only one C-20 and 4 C-32 aircraft.
Really?
When it comes to reconnaissance, the following aircraft play a significant role: 13 MC-12W Liberty medium to low altitude twin-engine turboprop aircraft, 14 E-8C Joint Stars Joint Surveillance Target Attack Radar Systems, and 26 U-2S Dragon Lady subsonic high-altitude spy planes.
That is
Finally,
a weird-looking plane.
Two more notable pieces of equipment to cover: helicopters and unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs. The former category includes approximately 5,737 units, which are instrumental to the U.S. military. Due to their flexibility and tactical usefulness, these helicopters can be deployed to various missions, including search and rescue, medical evacuation, and special operations support. However, these rotorcraft units can also attack. The U.S. owns about 1,000 dedicated attack helicopters that can provide on-call fire support for ground
all
forces,
Apaches then,
neutralize armored vehicles, or counter dug-in enemy force elements. Lastly, unmanned aerial vehicles. This is another area
What the
where the
fuck is
US
that?
absolutely
Looks like a paper
demolishes
airplane.
any competition. The country's armed services operates one of the largest UAV forces, with over
Oh
16,000
my
units.
days.
These drones are primarily intelligence, surveillance,
16K,
reconnaissance
bro.
types, or ISR, but direct attack units are
That is
also
a
included.
crazy
Now that we
amount.
covered the US's land and air power, let's dive into and explore the strength of the US naval forces in 2024. By now,
How many
you probably won't be
aircraft carriers
surprised to
are there?
learn that these forces also beat out potential competitors by a considerable margin. Sure, with 472 vessels, the US might not have the largest fleet in terms of size. However, the US Navy boasts unmatched technological sophistication and operational capabilities, ensuring
Quality.
dominance in both traditional and asymmetric maritime warfare scenarios. The US Navy also dominates the number game in areas where it matters the most on the sea: carriers. The
Yeah.
US currently has 11 carrier ships, which is more than all the other countries in the world combined. Fair.
crazy,
10 of
man.
these are the Nimitz-class nuclear-powered carriers that still utilize Cold War technologies to some extent. Still, they remain formidable assets, complemented by the newer, more advanced Gerald R. Ford-class supercarrier, which promises to take the U.S. military's naval capabilities to new heights. With 9 impressive warships, even though these warships are smaller and less expensive to procure, other notable military forces are yet to keep up. Japan has the most helicopter carriers after the U.S., with only 4. But let's turn
Yeah,
up the dramatics
like, it's not
and
even
discuss
close,
the
man.
more aggressive vessels in the Navy's
America
fleet.
just
And what better way to
doubles and
start
everything.
than with destroyers? Destroyers are advanced multi-role vessels equipped with various sensory equipment, processing systems, and weaponry to counter threats from the air, the surface, and under the surface, often completing their missions with unbelievable precision. With all these characteristics in mind, you probably won't be surprised to hear destroyers are rather costly to procure and operate. That's why only a dozen countries in the world own destroyers, most of them operating only a few of these powerful vessels. Now, of course, the same can't be said
few?
for the
Oh,
US,
man.
which owns as many as 75 destroyer-type ships, the most in
That's
the world.
GG,
Among
man.
those destroyers, 2 classes are represented: the Arleigh Burke class with 73 destroyers, and the Zumwalt class with 2. Now,
Okay.
let's peek under the surface.
What's the
There,
difference?
you'll find an impressive fleet of attack submarines, combining Cold War relics with more modern and advanced entries. First category is filled with vessels like the 26 Los Angeles
Los
class,
Angeles
18
class.
Ohio class, and 3
Ohio.
Seagull class attack submarines, 4 Virginia class submarines that are gradually replacing their older counterparts. Now, while we have to go underwater to view this
That's
display
a lot
of
of
naval
subs,
might,
though.
it's important to know that these submarines can also conduct land attacks, some of them even through nuclear means. And don't get fooled by the name attack submarines, as these vessels can also be used for reconnaissance or to provide support during special forces operations. There are aspects of the naval fleet where the US isn't the leading military force in the world. In fact, the US doesn't even rank in the top 10 in some of them. But if you know anything about the country's determination, you know that this won't last for long. Take frigates, for example. Currently, the US has 0 of these multi-role general-purpose vessels, which
Really?
places it at the bottom of the 145 countries ranked by global firepower. Though keep in mind that
Yeah,
the
well-
US rarely uses frigates anymore. However, other powerful countries like Russia and China haven't followed suit.
But the thing is, with rating it like that doesn't really make any sense. They probably use a different type of naval ship or whatever maybe instead of it. So I don't think they should be given a place. It should just be a stat that they ignore because they're not using these type of ships. I wouldn't say it's like unfair, but that's just stupid to rank it like that. If they don't have a ship because they don't find it useful or they need it, you can't really say they're 145th because they haven't really tried. But okay.
So the
Doesn't
US
really
is
make
getting
any
back
sense.
into the frigate game. The construction started
Oh, okay.
in August 2022 after a 35-year break. And
How
the
many are they
USS
getting then?
Constellation, the lead class of these vessels, should enter service around 2026. Other areas where the US Navy currently falls short are, number 1, the Corvette-type
Corvettes.
vessels, which are very similar to frigates. Currently, the Navy operates 23 of these small vessels, which is almost 4 times less than the first-ranking country, Russia. Number 2, the mine and counter-mine warfare ships that lay down or neutralize minefields in strategic waters. As of 2024, the Navy owns 8 of these vessels, a far cry from the 47 owned by the same country that owns the most corvettes, Russia.
На БТРе, блядь.
The Merchant Marine Force. During wartime, these vessels transport soldiers, supplies, and vehicles. The U.S. owns around 1,800 merchant vessels, so it doesn't even manage to crack the top 10 leading maritime nations. Still, these very few items in no way detract from the extraordinary military might that the U.S. possesses. All of this boils down to one vital question: how will the U.S. use its military might in 2024? So, as of 2024, the U.S. has over 100,000 service members in Europe, 30,000 throughout the Middle East, 375,000 in the Indo-Pacific region. From these numbers and the ongoing military operations, it's easy to conclude where the U.S. stands on most matters in terms of foreign policy. Yeah. For instance, Europe received another 20,000 American soldiers after the Russo-Ukrainian War began in 2022 to enhance its military capabilities. Did any of this information surprise you?
Yeah.
For better or worse?
Some of it did.
Do you see any country surpassing the U.S. as the global military power
it's not
anytime
even close.
soon? Share your opinions in the comments section
I think
below.
America's
Then check
first,
out
second,
what
and
if
third,
USA
and then
launched a
comes,
nuclear bomb
I don't know,
minute
China,
by
whatever it
minute.
was. Some of it I did expect, you know, the Navy and the Air Force. But I was kind of surprised about, like, the active personnel. I thought America was bringing in more people instead of making it less. I don't know, maybe it's gonna, you know, start going up a bit more now with, you know, Russia and Ukraine or whatever. I really did enjoy this. It's always nice to learn about, you know, what's going on in the world. And, like, you know, stuff like this. It's kind of important to know, you know, where different countries are with the military and whatnot. Because sometimes it can just go like that. And then a country's just developed everything and just become better in every sort of way. But it does seem the same, where America is way on top compared to everyone else. All I'm saying is, I hope there isn't like a World War III where all of these countries get involved. Because I ain't wanting to fight against 650... Actually, it becomes like 1.3 billion, I think, soldiers they have to, you know, fight. Yeah, I'm good on that. And what would stop Donald Trump or, you know, any world leader from pressing that red button and just skipping the headache? And that will essentially be the introduction to Fallout. But yeah, I hope you did enjoy this video. This was a really long one, but nonetheless, hope you did enjoy. As always, stay safe, and I will hopefully see you in my next up-and-coming reaction coming out soon.